So we're here to make sure that we understand that this is not over, that we're still going to fight it. We definitely do not agree on having another shredder yet here in Pilsen. As you know, Pilsen has been a community that has a struggle with pollution historically. This is not the first time that the community will be hurt by policies that are not necessarily in the best interest of the community. So we're here to let the public know that we will not let this issue go. We will certainly do not think is neither safe or fair to have a shredder in front of a high school, so close to a high school, neither to have another shredder in the community. So we're here just to make sure that that message is communicated to our representatives who we wish were here today. So we were here, and should we also translate in Spanish?
I don't need, no.
Does anyone need a translation in Spanish, or? Okay, great, thank you. So, we, without much more discussion, I think I would like to. We will have a brief presentation about the consequences. We want to make sure that we understand what we really City Hall approved, and we see some of the consequences of what we've been fighting for and what we're fighting for. So we have invited a great friend of the organization and a community member too, Troy Hernandez, he's also a statistician. He's an expert in statistics, and he's done some great work on the issue. So we'd like to introduce Troy and thank him for giving us a presentation tonight. Thank you, Troy.
Oh, thank you. Ready?
Ready.
Okay. So as Byron mentioned, my name is Troy Hernandez. I am a PhD in statistics from UIC. And while this area is environmental statistics, my area of specialty is machine learning, which is computer science. So, I'm going to try to do my best on interpreting the results of what's in the literature on metal shredders. So. This is me. This is my homepage at UIC. You can go find it. It's still there. I graduated last May. You might also know me from this article that the last time I gave a similar talk in at the Whittier School. It was a little briefer than this. This is my response. You can find on my webpage in 3 parts. And so that's that. So what is metal shredder or recycler? They're basically the same thing. One sounds nicer. One is metal recycler. The other is metal shredder. So you can see there's a difference in how you think about these things when you use these certain words, and when you use other words. So there's one that's currently there's one metal recycler that's already in the neighborhood, as Byron mentioned. It's over on Paulina, just south of Blue Island. And if you go to Google, you can find this, and can kind of scope it out. It's worth looking just to kind of see what is in the neighborhood already. So as a statistician, I kind of break things down into pros and cons. So as we've been told, the pros are 90 jobs, more competition for metal recycling. That would mean slightly lower prices for metal products and slightly higher prices for people delivering scrap to the facilities. The cons would be, well, as we've all talked about, is safety, explosions, and fires. Competition for existing jobs. We can't expect that there will be, no loss of jobs when there's more competitors in the area. And more pollution. So air, noise, water, pollution, and that's going to result in extra cancer cases, extra asthma attacks, and extra premature deaths. Some other things that maybe the community doesn't care about is $50,000 of campaign contributions. That doesn't really help most of us, but it does help somebody else. Namely our alderman, Danny Solis.
No, he should.
So in this talk, I'm just going to focus on just this one thing, extra cancer cases, which is what, if you Google health effects of metal recyclers, you're going to find this article from the Houston Chronicle, put out in 2013, and it covers this report by Houston's Department of Health and Human Services and the US EPA and Rice University, also located in Houston. You'll find this report, and if you have access to academic journals or you want to pay $30, you can get, this is their full report. Luckily my UIC account is still working, so I don't have to pay $30. So I'm going to try to summarize what this is about quickly. So it says metal recycling is an important growing industry, so on and so forth. This research, if you skip to the end, this research adds 2 new aspects to the literature: identification of types and magnitude of metal particulate matter air pollutants associated with the previously unrecognized area source, which is metal recyclers, and their potential risk to health. So what's interesting about metal recyclers, and here's some of their credentials as I mentioned before: Rice, US EPA, Houston Department of Health and Human Services. There's PhDs and MS, Masters of Science degrees up there, and other credentials. So these aren't just some random graduate students trying to crank out a paper. These are, in my opinion, real scientists. So what's really interesting about metal recyclers is over and over again we hear that people, we hear that the metal recyclers will fulfill all the requirements of the US EPA. That's kind of an empty statement because the EPA doesn't monitor these area sources. So there's two, when you talk about stationary sources of pollution, there's area sources which are small and major sources which are large. So they emit a large amount of pollution. So like the smokestacks from a coal factory are large. So those get monitored. These little ones don't get monitored. But there's a concern about the chemical composition of the emissions, because these emissions are particularly dangerous when they're metal particulates. They cause cancer, so we know this. And so the Houston's Department of Health and Human Services received multiple complaints of smoke, odor, and dust between 2004 and 2012. And so this is why this study was conducted. They knew the EPA wasn't going to do anything, so the Department of Health and Human Services in Houston stepped up, which is something that I hope our Department of Health here in Chicago will do. So where and when? So the study was conducted over the course of 18 months from 2011 to 2012. It was performed in Houston, like I said, in a mixed industrial residential area, very similar to Pilsen. They set up their sensors 100 feet outside of 5 medium-sized metal shredders. I'll get more into what medium-sized means exactly a little bit later. And then they set up air testing sites for metal shredders, 10 of them away from metal shredders, just to have a control, to make sure that we're not getting readings of things that are just in the air generally. And so what did they find? They found that what the communities recognized as smoke, dust, and odor nuisance has ultimately been found to pose a potential health concern due to the chemical composition of the emissions. So as they suspected, the fact that you're burning up tiny little bits of metal, it's a lot worse than just general dust and pollution from a normal area source or a major source. So the EPA defines as an acceptable increase in the number of extra cancer cases as 1 in a million. So this is for major sources. So if a major source is going to cause more than 1 in a million extra cancer cases, then that major source is going to have to clean up or shut down. And so previously with the coal factories, they were grandfathered in past that, so this is why we had this big struggle this last decade to get rid of them. What this study found was that in every scenario, outside of all 5 of the metal shredders that they looked at, they estimated that this would cause between 1.03 and 756 extra cancer cases per million. So this is probabilistic. You don't know if you're going to get that. But that clearly, so in all cases, I mean, whether they're running for just 1 shift a day or 2 shifts a day or 3 shifts a day, you know, whether the cleanest or they're the dirtiest, this is the range you're going to get. So that's a bad thing. Even the cleanest one exceeds the EPA's limits of what's acceptable for extra cancer cases. And another talking point that we heard you know, from the company was that they're new, they're going to be extra clean. These 5 facilities ranged in age of 7 years old to 70 years old. So extra new doesn't mean it's extra clean. It's still going to, if it were a major source, it would be, the EPA would be investigating it. So if the EPA's rules were more reasonable, those facilities would be forced to clean up or shut down. But the EPA's rules are not entirely reasonable in this area. So what does this mean for Pilsen? So Pilsen's population density is 4 times higher than that of Houston. So I think we have something like 15,000 people per square mile here in Pilsen. We've got about 4,000 people per square mile in Houston. So for every set of lungs in Houston that's inhaling this stuff, we're going to have 4 sets of lungs in Pilsen inhaling this stuff. The shredders that they studied were medium sizes, as best I can tell. They processed between 200 and 500 tons of metal a day. At the hearing at the Zoning Board of Appeals, we found out the proposed shredder would process between 3,000 and 4,000 tons a day. That's between 6 and 20 times larger. So on a, you know, about 10 times larger, an order of magnitude. So the population density is 4 times higher here, and the shredder is 10 times bigger. So this is not a good recipe. The new facility, they claimed they wouldn't be using torch cutting that the authors believed to be a primary cause of emissions. That was an untested hypothesis. So, you know, between the 10 times larger and the lack of torch cutting, they claimed. No, they didn't say no torch cutting. They said no heat. I'm not a lawyer, and I didn't know what questions to ask them. Whether that means they won't be torch cutting or if they're just not going to be melting any metal down. We don't know. But at the end of the study, they say further study is warranted to better understand metal air pollution levels in the community, and if necessary, to evaluate the feasibility of emission controls and identify operational improvements and best management practices for this industry. This is from 2013, this study. And this is the first study of its kind. Nobody else has looked at this. So, you know, this is the best that we have. And this is only on cancer. This is not asthma. This is not, you know, particulate matter. Now, we can do a little bit of estimation. So, and this, you know, like I said, I'm a machine learning specialist and not an environmental statistics specialist. But the authors talk about you know, a 1 mile radius around the shredders in Houston when they talk about you know, what's in the neighborhood and what's going to be affected by these metal shredders. And so within a 1 mile radius of these 2 shredders is all of Pilsen, pretty much. So, you know, if we just take these estimates of extra cancer cases and multiply them by the population of Pilsen, we can see that there's going to be, you know, a 1 in 20 extra cancer case per million, or 33 or 34 extra cancer cases per million. Or not per million, per Pilsen.
Yeah.
So, and that's after 30 years of exposure. It's after 30 years of exposure. So for 2 shredders, you just multiply by 2, not that hard, so you can see that there's going to be on the high end 67 extra cancer cases in Pilsen from these 2 facilities combined. And that's obviously not good. Again, these calculations are to my best guess, because again, the facility is going to be 10 times larger, but they claim they're going to not use the cuttings, so I'm just going to assume that those 2 things cancel each other out. I don't know if that's the case. You don't need a weatherman to know which way the wind blows. In Chicago, this is where the wind blows. So about 12% of the time, it comes out of the south and blows north. I rotated this 180 degrees so you'd know where the wind was blowing to, because you probably don't care where it's coming from. So you can apply that wind rose, and again, this should fade out a little bit towards the edges, because this is frequency of this wind rose is a frequency of where the wind is blowing, and not a strength. So you can kind of see the areas that are affected by SIMS right now, and you can see the area that's affected by pure metal. And then you can see the area that's going to be affected by both of them. And again, these things should fade out towards the end, but this is just give you a rough visual approximation. Benito Juarez is right at the intersection of right there. And we're also at the intersection right here. So, this is bad for bad for me. I live right here. But it's bad for everybody in this room.
Bad for all of us.
So the proposed course of action. So in conclusion, I think we should have delayed the approval of this facility by the Zoning Board of Appeals. But I'm hoping that the Illinois EPA will delay the approval of this facility until the Department of Public Health here, I think it's just the Department of Health, can study and get some more data and make an informed decision, instead of just guessing, oh yeah, it's going to be great and we're going to get lots of jobs. And another thing we can do is work with the existing facility to clean up their operation. Here's a list of possible engineering solutions from that same study PDF by Round and the Department of Health and Human Services in Houston. They talked about reducing fine emissions by removing cutting methods, putting up barriers, putting up a bag house, keeping the scrapyard clean and safer, and checking with regulatory experts before making major changes. I assume they will want to do some more investigation to see how this improves the pollution levels. Following these cleanups. Once we have that data, we can take the appropriate action. We don't have to guess. And this is again part of a larger issue, which I believe is campaign finance reform, which I got a PhD in statistics, so maybe I got a leg up on this. But this is not my job. I'm just volunteering. So it took me a few days of work to get this together. And you don't need a PhD in statistics to understand, if it's explained to you clearly, as I hope I've done. So I feel like if he didn't accept this $50,000, didn't need it to run his campaigns, maybe, he would come to the same reasonable conclusions that I have. So that's all I've got. I'll take any questions. Thank you.
Could you do me a favor? Could you go back to that screen where both shredders and
No.
could you leave that up there?
Sure.
Just so that we can visually see what it is that we're being asked to accept. Because, ladies and gentlemen, this is environmental racism. They have come into Pilsen and they have said that we need jobs so desperately, low-paying jobs, that it is worth your health, our health to get minimum paying jobs in our community. Now, when we got rid of the fisc, we were well aware of those jobs, and it was hard to accept. But we also said that 43 deaths a year, 1,000 emergency visits to the hospital for upper respiratory was worth the loss of jobs, because we were not going to give our lives up for this any longer. So this has to be a visual that we keep in mind and that we hold, because this is what we're being asked to accept, and we're being told that this is not an issue.
Can you translate?
En español, es importante tener esta visualización, porque esta visualización nos deja ver exactamente qué es lo que nuestra comunidad nos están obligando a aceptar. No nos están obligando porque fue la comunidad y protestó contra este shredder, y nos han dicho que esta comunidad necesita trabajos más de que lo necesitamos nuestra salud. Me da un coraje. ¿Quién quiere más trabajos o quieren ver a sus hijos, a su familia fallecer de salud? ¿Qué vamos a preferir? Y no es nada más una vida, ahora estamos hablando de muchas más. So I'm sorry, I went off on a tangent, but we're being asked to sacrifice our health for low-paying jobs. And what I'm saying is, are we willing to pay that price? Are we willing to pay the price that our health, that the health of our family and our children, for the sake of 90 low-paying jobs over the course of how many years? This is environmental racism, and we should not accept it.
Yeah, we can open up to discussion now, and then we have any questions for Troy.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Hi, I'm Joe Allen. I live over on Allport Street. You know, that picture is so stunning. I just think we should make as many copies as possible and bring it to every home and give it to everyone, because you can't help but look at that and just go, well, when the wind blows from the west, it goes into my house. When the wind blows, I mean, it goes from the southwest, it's just blowing into my back window. I mean, I just think everybody should see that for what it is. I mean, it's very powerful. The other thing, Troy, I thought it was a great presentation, is when you were talking about the impact outside of the shredder area, the work area.
Uh-huh.
Does anybody have any statistics, or is there any OSHA stuff on, for the workers in these places, disability, death, disease, from working in these facilities? Because if that's what's going on the outside, what is it doing to the guys who work inside? I mean, it must be horrendous.
I imagine they have to wear some face masks to keep them from inhaling this stuff.
Yeah.
How
effective is that?
I would imagine not very effective. I spent 5 months in Beijing, and everybody wears face masks for the first month, and then you're like, this isn't helping at all. So I don't see that helping them very much. So I don't know. I haven't seen any of that data.
There's no studies, right?
There's no studies that I know. Like I said, this is the first study on this broader environmental effect. Yeah.
I actually live practically right in that target area. But I'm a little surprised that the question of the coatings on the metal isn't raised. These like crushed up cars arrive at the Sims is the existing one, right?
Right.
They all have they haven't been stripped of their paint and all the other coatings. Now all that stuff is, when it's shredded, that's all going to be toxic dust. Actually, that is going to go farther, because it's, I think, is lighter than the metal.
Right.
than the metal dust. And I'm surprised that that isn't mentioned at all. All those coatings are toxic, aren't they? I mean, if you're standing there breathing them.
I would imagine they are. That's why, I mentioned specifically this was just on the metal. And, there's not a lot of information more broadly on what else is being. This is just what else is being emitted by these sources. It's just the metal. And so, this is pretty scary just looking at the metal. It's scary enough for me to stand up here and tell you that we probably shouldn't have this metal shredder in the neighborhood.
But the metal dust is not the only toxic that's being emitted by these
Right,
places.
right.
Presumably there's a whole salad of them.
Sure. And no, as far as the environmental statistics literature goes, there's no information on it. No, it hasn't been looked at.
Has there been other locations that they have looked at along the river? That's part of the reason why they want to be in that area. Is
Right.
They probably move a lot of the product along the river.
By barge.
So that, so have they looked at other areas along the river? Is that?
I don't know.
Is that a question, that's desolate, where there's all industrial?
Right. I mean, that's, one of the things I keep saying.
Travel, to River North. Goose Island, is up there, it's empty, it's all industrial.
Right there, there's actually one up there.
There is there.
Yeah. And so, this is something I keep saying is that, sure, we need these metal recycling facilities. I think it was just on the news today that, U.S. steel prices are too high to be competitive. But, we don't need it in such a high population density area. You want these moved to low population or no population density areas. And that just seems like common sense.
Troy, you know what, Jackie, I remember we asked that question of the company, and as I recall, they're looking at the large piece of land. So there might have been other places that they looked at but didn't offer potentially as much space as where they're looking to build now. And that's what I vaguely recall.
Do they already own it?
No.
The other thing that was posed to us was that because it isn't already an because that area was previously zoned as industrial, why not look at it? It was zoned industrial, so it's just a given that some industry would come there. That's what I vaguely remember.
But who owns
Someone.
the property now?
That's a good
What's
question.
the question?
Who owns the property? I remember
Some
what
of the
used
folks,
to be.
they're
the
not,
parking-
I mean,
Since it's fine.
just in terms of a few things that have been asked, what John was saying before about, what kind of metals and what kind of other stuff comes out. In this kind of industry, it depends a lot what goes in, right? So it depends on how conscientious the actual operators are to be able to remove everything that needs to be removed and that should not be shredded. For instance, mercury, for instance, the gas tanks in the cars, they need to be drained and dried, and those kinds of things. So if you have operators that are not careless, they're gonna have problems, and they're gonna emit a lot of this stuff. And also you can have explosions and fires and things like that. It's easy to find articles if you just go and Google it about shredders that have had accidents in San Francisco and other places in the country. This is not uncommon. There might be some gas tank or something going in there and it blows. So that's another reason why we're concerned about that. The shredders that we have in Chicago are some of the largest shredders in the world. I understand that one of the shredders in the north side is the largest one in the world. So the one that's here is very large, and the one that they want to set up obviously is going to be large. Now, why are they here? The thing is, like in Chicago, the metal picking, gathering thing it's very important, very large. It's very ancient. It has to do in part because of the way the streets are laid out. So people go and pick up stuff, you know, along the alleys, you know, to pick them up. So these people want to bring their business close to those people that are picking up that stuff. That's the competition that they have today, right? If they're out there in the suburbs or if they're out of town, the guy picking up the stuff might not gonna go there because of the gas and other reasons. So they move closer, you know, to where they're gonna find all these people that are gonna sell them the stuff. At least that's the reasoning that we've been able to figure out after, you know, talking to a bunch of these people for a while. So we wanted to address some of those concerns.
Sure. Oh, I think there's another question.
Oh, yeah.
In Houston, in the study you were talking about, they found that this chemical hexavalent chromium, also known as chrome VEI or 6, was prevalent in the shredders that they looked into. It's some sort of metal pollutant that it's a product of the shredders.
Right. Yeah, that was found at every, that and a nickel was found at all 5 of the facilities. And hexavalent chromium is one of the most carcinogenic metals that you can find. So, you know, this is also bad news. And that was factored into those 756 extra cancer cases per million. Their measurements of that hexavalent chromium is where they got that estimate from.
Were you able to present this to Solis and the zoning and all these meetings?
You know, I gave, they were really rushing us through after 6 hours of sitting in the room, or 7 hours. So I was able to briefly go through it, you know, in a 2-minute elevator speech style. It must not have made any impact or enough of an impact because, you know, and I did email this study to the Zoning Board of Appeals. They asked me for it, so I gave them the link to it. But apparently it wasn't enough to sway their opinion.
And so now you've mentioned Illinois EPA is a possibility of I mean, the fact is it passed. So
It did.
the goal now is what can we do? Where does the Illinois EPA stand?
Then can we go? I mean, I don't know if everybody has an agenda, but can we go there? I think this is a good segue, unless someone else has another question. We can segue to what can we do about it? Because actually, we have not even been asked. This is being already being approved, it's been imposed on us. So I think it's important to see what we can do and the next step. So yeah, I think I'm not sure everybody has an agenda, but some of the possible steps, actually there's a construction permit process that they have to follow with Illinois EPA. So I think that's where I think we can address that issue, make sure, because there's not being a process. I think what you said is very, very, very right. There's not being a process of dialogue and actually information. I mean, this information has not been out, and that's what I think we also were informed by a third party about this being going on, and there was, if any discussion at all, we had even the opportunity to present was even, I think, random. So I think the information has to be out there, and we should have a real process of discussion and information with the community to see what are the real impacts. And I think that should have been done long ago. I think this is already been pushed through, rushed through. There's not been a process. There being some collection of signatures where people have gone around the community without giving information about what they were asking about. They were misinforming people about jobs, but not the consequences of that, and even the job figure may have been misleading. So I think we ought to be having a real dialogue and a conversation, and perhaps what we can do, because unfortunately we have an alderman who's pushing very hard in City Hall to pass this through, perhaps because of the contributions he's received already. So perhaps we can, that's what we can do, and I think there's a petition that we can sign. The other possible step, I think, is an appeal into the zoning board's decision, so we can follow up an appeal. But I think that will require a lot of community participation if we're going to do any of this.
What's going on with the communication with Pedro? That's kind of what I would ask. Is more like are they on board, and to what degree on some of those next steps?
Yeah, I think they are. I've talked with Jerry a few times, and I also volunteer over there.
We don't know what you're talking
Pero
Oh,
is the
Pero.
environmental group in Pilsen.
Yeah, and Jerry Mead is the director of that organization. I think they're right on board with us in that same respect.
I'm sorry. My name is DeVito. I live in the area as well. Do you have legal counsel? That would be a first step, I would think, before we do before we make any steps it would save you a lot of extra skipping steps to get right to, to retain an attorney to review this.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
And cut the chase.
Sure.
And get right to, business. And go ahead and file an appeal and just do it. Subpoena your alderman and get him under a deposition if you have to. But you do what you have to do as fast as you can legally. And if we have to raise money, you retain a lawyer. And there's also legal services out there available for free. So, there's plenty of legal clinics. You can get. I'm sure we can get representation. But that would be my first step.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
You'll save yourself a lot of steps with petitions and signatures, and you're gonna get the people, you're gonna get the neighborhood involved as much as you can. But you'd save yourself a lot of extra steps. You retain a lawyer.
It's a good suggestion.
We haven't retained one, because, we don't have the money to do it, but we are consulting we're consulting with some people. We haven't retained one, because, we don't have that kind of cash, but
It doesn't take the cash out of the issue.
Right, there are some people that are helping us out, people at University of Chicago maybe.
I mean, maybe if we reach out to a Sierra Club or some other people that can help us get a pro bono or something.
Well, interestingly, two things I should mention. Sorry, but there was a story about Karen Lewis, the president of the teachers, coming out against the shredder in the Sun Times. So I think that's an interesting development. And there's also, we've talked to Alivio Medical Center, which is very well respected health organization in the city and here in the
They
community.
just had a big expose on them the other night
Right. Well,
on the clinic. So
on the day, I'm not saying that.
No, that's good for you to use them.
Right. No, but what I wanted to say is that they have endorsed, doing something about this also. So we're trying to reach out to other folks that can be important in the campaign.
Well, along those lines, what does Benito Juarez have to say? The teachers there, the local school council?
Nothing.
Have
You-
they say nothing?
It's interesting.
How can they say nothing?
Nothing. Can I tell you what, there's an environmental group of students at Benito Juarez. And this environmental group of students was led by I don't know if he's a professor or a graduate student of Chicago State University. And this group of students and this person from Chicago State conducted a study. And they determined that there were no mal effects or ill effects or any problem or any health concerns with the shredder being built across the street from Benito Juarez.
And has Troy seen their study?
Well, I asked for the study. And I asked on what basis did they determine, what tools did they use? I wasn't given any information.
Yeah,
Well, so Coleman mentioned that as though it was some big, important people at Chicago State conducting research, with real information based on the schemes that they gave the plot of how things are going to go at that metal shredder site. But then if it's only these students being surveyed, how could that be a legitimate study?
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
You pay anybody enough money, and they're going to say what you want them to say. So obviously, these students from Benito Juarez have been molded
Brainwashed or whitewashed.
to say what needs to be said by these adults.
Slim Coleman and this.
Yes.
What about that one? What is that one all about?
Well, those are the people that are
No, there's Slim Coleman business.
He's one of the, this is the organization that's pushing for the shredder. They say that we need 90
What
jobs.
happened to him?
Sold out.
So,
Well, interestingly enough,
sorry, I'm too old, I should. So,
Yep, right.
there's a Brian.
To also mention the connection between Slim and Emma
Yeah.
and Mr. Solis. Emma Lozano's daughter, works in Solis's office. And Emma Lozano's group is the only community organization that has come out in support of the shred.
Right.
So making one, two, three.
Connect the dots.
Three dots are,
They're buying people for practically.
Yeah, not only that, interesting enough, I mean,
We'll hire Emma.
interestingly enough, that actually the group with Emma Lozano and Slim Coleman have received a grant where they're supposed to be working on health issues too. So, I mean, there's some different links where, you know, I'm not sure. I mean, there's a paradox that actually they're working supposedly in some health issues and they have not actually perhaps listened to Troy.
With respect to this study that they produced, is it published in a peer-reviewed journal?
Right.
No.
I mean, I can come up with a study that says cigarette smoking is very healthy for you. And if it's not published in a peer-reviewed journal, it's not really going to mean anything. I still produced a study, though. It's not going to be a good study, but, you know, so if it's not peer-reviewed, then, you know, they're not publishing it, then it's probably not worth listening to.
We, in terms of the LSC at Benito Juarez, what did they say? Again, that LSC is a very tight kind of, and very tightly run LSC, so their meetings aren't always public, you don't always know. But Emma Lozano went to one of their LSC meetings and proposed to the LSC members the advantages of having the shredder across the street from Benito Juarez. Students that I've stopped and I've asked, do you know about the shredder? What do you think about the shredder? I've just randomly stopped students at what school do you go to? Do you know about this? Do you know about that? They don't know anything. No one is telling the students what's going on, yet there's a health group in there that's done a study on the wonders that the shredder is going to bring. It's all very manipulated.
How are they getting in there? Like, are they gonna come in from Cermak Road, or like, where all that I mean, I know the
The
one
truck
on the
traffic
north
will
side.
probably come from the expressway through Ashland.
I know, and then are they gonna enter from Ashland there?
Yeah.
They're gonna, no, they're
From
not gonna be
Cermak.
Get a picture.
They're not gonna come to us and they're gonna do it through Cermak.
But how can they not, nobody, okay, so.
No, there were-
Got 90 jobs,
you know-
they're gonna need another 90 just to direct it.
There were people that were looking at the traffic congestion.
Yeah,
And again, you know what? You're going to find someone who's going to say,
It'll be good
there's,
for us.
it's going to be good. There is going to be no traffic congestion. Vicky took pictures. Vicky took pictures. She went out with her telephone. She took pictures just randomly at different times of the day. When we met at the board to present the information, she took them the photos that she had of the traffic now as it exists and how congested it gets on Cermak, you know, at the intersection of Ashland, you know, at the intersection. She took pictures just to see on a regular day at this time, this is what it looks like. Can you imagine what it's going to be when you open up this other industry? They, as much information as they were given,
Wagons and guys.
But I
they
know
didn't
why.
listen. They
But
didn't
okay,
want to
they
hear
use
it.
the helicopters that bring-
Yeah.
Oh, wait, and no, now we'll have, and we're going to have two of them. And we're going to have two heliports. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say that at the hearing, the Sims attorney was posing like as an opposing counsel, opposing viewpoint, to try to bring out information from the side for pure metals. And they basically were like saying that they're doing 3,000 tons of, you know, they're getting all 3,000 per day, and that's gonna increase all this traffic. But did they look at existing traffic patterns, or, you know, and their transportation expert or traffic expert said no. So they didn't even look at the rate of traffic in given times, But then they have like times when they're going to be accepting medals and everything, and it's just going to be a mess.
What he said is he hadn't counted trucks. Actually, it was very unbelievable because somebody asked him, so how do you know this? Do you count trucks? And he said no. So his study was something very theoretical or something like that about it. But it's unbelievable to think that there are not going to be any more trucks. And the diesel fumes and these trucks sit there sometimes, for hours before they, and if it's too cold, the cars are running, the things are running. So, do you want to say something?
I think there was a question in the back. Oh, Kevin.
Yeah, about the trucks, to give the devil his due. The position of the company coming in is that there is a finite amount of metal to be recycled in Chicago, so that quantity won't dramatically expand. So their business model is to steal business from cities.
That's right.
So the trucks that go into their plant will not be going into cities. Now, you can take that for what it's worth. I don't think that is entirely true. I don't think it's a zero-sum game with the trucks. So that's one point I want to make. Another point I want to make is that if we could contact the authors of this paper, that might be very useful in terms of having them, just write a letter saying that they would expect a good deal of pollution emitted from a plant this size.
And the location of a high school nearby, whether that's
right. Even given the best technology, like we could ask them, do you think this would be a good idea? Maybe they could come up with a letter.
Yeah, I've been in touch with them just to kind of dig into their paper and get some more details with them, and that's a good idea. I'll see if they, as they work for the US EPA, and yeah, I'm sure that they'd be maybe apprehensive.
Although maybe they want to come and expand on their paper and study what's going to.
Who knows?
How old are the these plants? Existing plants.
So that's why initially why I emailed them was that the plants that they studied were between 7 and 70 years old.
And what kind of securities are they putting on to update these plants for the pollution that they put out?
Yeah.
Would be, maybe they can make it safe. If it's a done deal and these things are going to be built, well then make sure that they have up-to-date requirements of.
Right. Yeah, that's addressed in their presentation. If you just Google, if you do a few Google searches, or if you want me to give you that PDF of their presentation, that stuff is in there, and that's what I put in my presentation as well. Is that we shouldn't be adding more. We should be stopping the one that's here and cleaning up the one that's here.
We have one question. One more.
I understand that CTU supports your fight, so couldn't they help this group to pass out the information to the teachers and the students about what this shredder means to them in terms of health risks?
Well, I don't think this is a CTU issue. So I think this is a community issue. I mean, I think we can definitely get the support. I'm sure CTU will be sympathetic, but it's not only CTU. This is not a CTU issue, and I'm sure we agree with it. I mean, Karen Lewis is being just in agreement with us that this is not fair or safe. But this is a community issue, and that's what we hear. To the question that we had about the LSCs, we should have actually. Juarez should have a position on this, and it's very questionable why we don't have a position from Juarez. And I think we have not been able to bring the information to the LSCs because some politics within the schools. We have a campaign that we would like to announce too, that we actually trying to get more representation on LSCs so that we can have these conversations within the schools. That's what they should be occurring. Juarez should have a discussion about this. They should be informed, but honestly, we don't have it.
I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that it's going to affect the kids in the classroom that are right across the street from us.
That's right, but we need to present.
It's going to affect the teachers.
Right.
Trying to teach over the, unless they're planning to put this. I don't know how big this property is. Are they?
It's huge. It's from Cermak to the river.
So maybe their shredder's actually going to be at the river.
No.
No, it's gonna be right there in the corner.
Well,
Well,
yeah, like-
you know, so it is a CT, I think it is a CTU.
No, you know what?
Benito was, it is a community.
It is a,
issue.
we.
It's all of us.
It,
gotta
it's,
get
all- it's,
together.
when it was asked at the zoning board, whenever Benito Juarez, whenever the school came, the name came about, the chairman of the zoning board said that's an issue that CPS.
Well, no, the lawyer for Pure.
The
was-
lawyer for Pure said, yeah, so it was the other people that kept saying, well, if the school, then the CPS has to stand up for Benito
Meaning
Juarez.
that community members couldn't even speak up for
We
the
couldn't
students
speak, right,
or the
right.
school.
We couldn't speak up for the school. If anyone was gonna defend the school, it had to be CPS.
That's right.
Now,
Those are-
now, you know, we can't even get into the school sometimes to talk about the issues that concern the residents, and they're saying, you know,
Yeah.
let CPS handle it.
Right. We don't make sure clear. I mean, we understand the CTU is the obviously concerned. We say, but we also should have the conversation. We think we don't even have the ability to have the conversation. That's what we're saying. But we definitely appreciate CTU's.
Have you tried to meet with the principal?
Yes,
Set up a meeting?
yes.
When was this? What was
Not necessarily with regards to this particular issue, but we have in other occasions, other issues that are relevant to the community that we felt we needed to have his input. Yes, we have tried to meet with him, and he is in a how to put it politely, evasive.
But he met with Pure, so how does that
Evasive
work?
and often unavailable, or he'll make you wait for 45 minutes and hope that you're gone when he comes out.
Well, two more questions. I think we got to start wrapping up. So two more questions, one and two.
Well, I was just wondering if people know who the members of the local school board are, and there are LSC elections coming up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
And that's what we'd like to.
Is it worth considering some people running for that?
Absolutely. I mean, that would definitely. That's what is the last item actually on the agenda. So, what we'll actually do just to say, well, consider, before you leave, sign a petition to stop the shredder. That's one one thing that you can do today, right now. Just bring the petitions to the mayor, and then, consider maybe attend the next city council meeting on April 2nd at 10 a.m. We'll definitely have your information. Make sure you write your information, your email, and your phone number so we can stay in touch with you to the next steps. And the other thing, the last announcement, is that actually we are having community representatives actually running for LSCs. I mean, that's what we need to be at. That's why we have made that as a core and a priority for our group, to make sure that we have representation. So that we would like to get volunteers. Our next planning meeting is on March 27th at 6 p.m. at the Pilsen Alliance office. We would love to have more community representation in the schools. I mean, definitely, we understand that we have these issues, but we also should be having these conversations before they actually happen, before they are approved. So, so please, if you consider to be a volunteer, we'll definitely appreciate it. I'm not sure, Brian?
If you can't go to the meeting this Thursday, just go to the Pilsen Alliance page and push like, and then you can get our updates about who we're supporting, who we think are the good reps in the schools in Pilsen who are running for the LSC, like Byron.
Yeah, I'm running for Pilsen Academy community member. So if you, check box 26.
And Byron is running?
I'm running also for LSC at Youngman, so you can definitely support some people coming to the schools and having these conversations, this information going to the schools. So, and you would love to be a volunteer, we'd love to have more people.